Story 1: The Walls Remember by Marcus Webb from Chicago. There are sounds that apartments make. The creaking of old pipes, the footsteps of neighbors above. But what happens when those sounds change? What happens when they start following a pattern that shouldn't exist? Today, I'm sharing the experience of Marcus Webb, a tenant who discovered something deeply unsettling hidden within the walls of his supposedly ordinary apartment. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why he never went back. Marcus moved into a fourth-floor studio apartment in downtown Chicago during the spring of 2019. The place was cheap, suspiciously cheap for the location. The landlord barely asked questions during the walkthrough. Red flag number 1. The apartment itself was standard. A bedroom, small kitchen, bathroom, and a living area. But Marcus noticed something odd on his first night. Every evening, around 2 a.m., he'd hear scratching sounds coming from inside the walls. Not mice, not rats. Something deliberate. Something almost rhythmic. He ignored it the first week. City apartments are old. They settle. They make noise. But by the second week, the pattern became undeniable. The scratching would start exactly at 2:17 a.m., continue for precisely 8 minutes, then stop. Every single night, the same time, the same duration. Marcus started documenting it. He'd wake up, grab his phone, and record the audio. What he captured was disturbing. It wasn't the sound of an animal moving through the walls. It sounded like fingernails dragging against wood. Slow, deliberate. Like someone was inside the wall, trying to communicate, or trying to escape. On the 14th night, Marcus did something he probably shouldn't have. He knocked back. He stood up in the darkness, placed his hand against the wall where the sound seemed to originate, and knocked 3 times. The scratching stopped immediately. For the first time in 2 weeks, there was silence. Complete, absolute silence. And in that silence, Marcus heard something else. A sound so faint he almost convinced himself it was his imagination. It was the sound of breathing. Heavy breathing. On the other side of the wall. Someone was in there. Someone was in the walls of his apartment. And Marcus didn't sleep that night. He left the apartment and called the landlord the next morning, explaining about the scratching sounds and asking about the building's structure. The landlord got quiet, very quiet. He eventually told Marcus that 3 years ago, a tenant in the apartment directly next to Marcus's unit had died of a heart attack. The body wasn't found for nearly a month because the man had been so isolated. But here's the thing. The autopsy revealed something strange. The man had severe wounds on his hands and fingernails. Deep cuts, broken nails. The kind of damage that would come from repetitively scratching something. Something like drywall. The coroner wrote it off as self-inflicted behavior during mental breakdown. But the landlord mentioned something else. The man who died had lived in Marcus's apartment 2 years before. He had moved next door after requesting a transfer. Period. Marcus moved out that week. He's never returned to that building, and he's never been able to explain what was making that sound. But sometimes, he receives notifications from the building's rental app. New tenants moving in. tenants moving out just weeks later. And late at night, he wonders if they heard it too. If they're lying in their beds right now, listening to the walls scratch, waiting for something that's been trapped inside them for far longer than anyone realizes. ... Story 2: The Downstairs Neighbor by Sarah Chen from New York. Most people take their downstairs neighbors for granted. They make noise. They exist somewhere below you. But what if your downstairs neighbor was watching you? What if they had a window into every moment of your private life? What if they could see everything you did, every single day, and you had no idea? That's the nightmare that consumed Sarah Chen. And by the time she discovered the truth, it was already far too late. Sarah moved into a second-floor apartment in a converted brownstone in Brooklyn during October 2021. She was excited about the place. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, large windows overlooking a tree-lined street. The apartment below hers had a tenant, but she barely noticed him. His name was Derek Thompson. He was quiet, kept to himself. Sarah assumed he was just another invisible New York tenant, living his separate life, completely unconnected to hers. It wasn't until 3 months into her lease that things started feeling wrong. Little things, subtle things. Sarah would come home and find that her curtains, which she always kept closed, were slightly parted. Her apartment door had a soft ding, like someone had knocked so gently it almost sounded like the wind. Her laptop would be warm when she arrived home, even though she always left it closed and powered down. She started to feel watched. That deep, primal feeling of eyes on the back of your neck when you're alone. Sarah set up her phone to record one night. She propped it against a lamp, aimed at her bedroom door, and told herself she was being paranoid. She'd watch the footage in the morning and laugh at herself. But when she reviewed the video the next day, her blood went cold. Between 3 and 4 a.m., someone had entered her bedroom. They had stepped carefully across her floor, stopping just feet from her bed where she was sleeping. They had stood there, perfectly still, for nearly 45 minutes, just watching, just standing in her bedroom while she slept, completely unaware. When they finally left, they closed the door softly behind them. Sarah immediately called the police. They came, took a report, checked her locks. Everything was secure. No signs of forced entry. She must have forgotten to lock her door, the officer suggested. But Sarah knew better. She had triple-checked every lock. She always did. That's when Sarah decided to install a proper security system. Cameras in her apartment, alarm sensors on every window and door. She thought it would bring her peace of mind. Instead, over the next 2 weeks, the system captured something worse. It showed Derek Thompson, her downstairs neighbor, using a key to enter her apartment on 5 separate occasions. Each time late at night. Each time standing over her while she slept. Each time carefully studying the layout of her bedroom, her bathroom, her kitchen, as if committing every detail to memory. The police arrested Derek immediately. During the investigation, they discovered something that made Sarah's skin crawl for months. Derek had removed the access panel to the crawl space between their apartments. He had drilled small holes through the wooden beams, creating a network of observation points. He could watch her bedroom, her bathroom, her living room. For months, Derek had been living like a spider in his web, studying his tenant above like she was nothing more than an exhibit in a museum of obsession. But here's what keeps Sarah awake at night. Derek only had a 2-year sentence. His lawyers argued that he never touched her, never threatened her, never technically committed burglary because his name was on the lease, and he technically had access to the building's infrastructure. He's been out for 8 months. Sarah moved to a different state. She lives on the ground floor now, with bars on every window. She no longer sleeps deeply. And sometimes, when she's home alone, she still gets that feeling, that old familiar sensation of being watched. Because she knows the truth. Knowing where someone lives doesn't stop them. It just makes them more creative about where to look. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and let me know which of these disturbing true apartment experiences gives you the chills. And if you have your own terrifying apartment horror story, share it in the comments. I might feature your story in an upcoming video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more spine-tingling true horror stories that'll make you question everything you thought was safe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there.